It is podcasting time. We are coming to you from the Powerworks garage. Glenn Power is here. It's his garage. A big shout out to everyone listening. Exactly. Powerworks garage. Glenn Power. A big shout out to everyone on Talk 100.3 FM here in Dubai who are listening in on the podcast. Great to have you with us. Huge shout out to our number one fan in Canada, Elham, who listens intently to the program. She is amazing. And she has lots of comments and lots of ideas. And I think at some point we're going to get her on the podcast too. I'm sure if I said, Elham, we want to call you up, she'd say, okay, I'm here.
How was it? What time difference wise? Where are we at now?
9 hours.
Oh, so it's midnight.
Yeah. She might do it. She's young.
Yeah.
She's smart. She'll do it.
That's it. There you go. She can't be that smart if she's going to agree to do that, James.
I'll let her have a few words with you.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's great. It's great to be back in podcasting. Of course, so much going on and time is flying. I wanted to follow back on something that we talked about several podcasts ago, and that's the Skoda.
Yeah.
Are you still driving it?
Yeah.
Still loving it?
Yeah. What's not to love? You about 820 kilometers on a tank.
Oh man! And this is not an electric vehicle. This is not
and
a
it's
hybrid.
only a 50-litre tank as well, so it's like 140 dirhams to fill it from fumes.
And you're going 800 kilometers?
Yeah.
It's not hybrid.
No.
It's not electric.
So 1.5.
So this is saying a lot about technology.
Yeah.
I mean, engine technology for them to have tuned it, the right parts, the right spec, the right weight.
It's got the DSG gearbox on it, so it shifts gear when it's best for the way that you're driving.
Okay.
And it's light, small-ish. If you would say this car was small in the 70s and 80s, unless you lived in America, you'd be lying. But, you never look at a parking space in it and think, I'll move and look for another one. You can get in it. Parallel park.
You're in.
No problem.
Yeah.
But I don't know what's not to love about it.
Yeah.
It's like we had some people, so we moved house, we had some people around, and they were like, similar reaction to what Amy had, to be fair.
Okay.
Oh, Skoda, you own a garage. It's like, no, that's why it's a Skoda, mate.
Yeah.
Because and I'm VW all the way, but the T-Roc, which is the same vehicle, is going to cost me 40k more, maybe, if you by the time you spec it and everything else.
That's
now, I
crazy.
haven't bought this Skoda; it's on rental.
Yeah,
but even renting one's going to be more expensive. So, no, it's just the scent. Now, Amy has the same issues with it as I do. It's very tinny and plasticky inside, like touch surfaces, the contact surfaces. But would that be enough in terms of putting me off to buy it? Possibly. But for renting, no problem.
As your daily run around the city, you need something that you can just get to the supermarket. If you got to make a quick run to Abu Dhabi, okay, we can do that too. It's not a luxury car. You know that going in. It's affordable. You're getting 800 kilometers to a tank.
Yeah, 800 kilometers out of a tank.
Like, okay.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like there's something that we're more conscious of since having the ID6. There's no worry about looking at the gauge and how far can we go. Where do we stop?
Yeah.
And
that was the electric vehicle issue.
I mean, the Touareg I can get, nearly 1,000 kilometers if I drive the Touareg carefully, which is obviously a much bigger car.
Which is pretty good too.
But it's a huge tank.
Yeah.
But still, having had the electric vehicle, you do start to get used to thinking, all right, okay, how far have we got? How long have we got? And, I get the same issue with my mobile phone where on a Tuesday and a Thursday after work, I go down to the beach with my daughter because she has an activity on the beach. Shout out to Pirate Surf. But sometimes my phone's red hot all day and I'm looking at it, it's 5:30, sat on the beach for another hour and I've got 22% and I've got to get home and, like that's something that I think everybody understands that, oh no, my phone's going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
And having that with the car isn't great. So, Yeah, the Skoda's fantastic. Really, really happy with it. And it's so well equipped. As I say, the contact surfaces aren't plush. They aren't high end, but the equipment and everything in there is great. The armrest is there, the touchscreen, CarPlay on it. It just works, and the steering wheel's nice. Everything's good. Seats are comfortable.
To me, this is a positive endorsement because we're now looking at this thing. You've had it for months, and you're still saying, "Hey, this is a good vehicle."
Yeah. I think if I get to the point where there's 70,000 dirhams in my account that I can afford to actually spend on something that's not rent and fees,
yeah,
I would buy one. Yeah, I think I would.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good to know. This is good. This is very good. So anyone out there who's looking for that next vehicle, you're looking for that runaround, you've got a limited budget, but you want something that is reliable.
It still has that quality feel to it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing again. There's nothing wrong with wanting to aspire to own a Mercedes or a Porsche or whatever it may be that you aspire to own. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that, but in real terms, getting to and from work, the school, the shops, whatever it may be that you use your car for, I can't think of I can't think of any vehicle that's better value for money than this one at the moment. Genuinely, unless Ian sold one of his Skodas.
Well, that's it. Ian, the Skoda guy, big fan of our former radio show.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure if he's listening to the podcast, but I'm sure he does.
Yeah, probably. I mean, look, we're not affiliated with Skoda in any way. No. We're not affiliated with Ali and Sons, who are the distributor here. But go and check them out. They do an absolutely shocking job. Apart from a huge billboard as you come on Sheikh Zayed Road. In the northbound direction, there was the Ramadan billboard during Ramadan that just said, "Come and check out our Ramadan offers," but no pricing, no pictures of anything. I mean, they do a shocking. They really do a shocking job of their marketing.
Yeah, they've got another billboard with a wonderful Skoda photo on it, and you just look at it and you go, "That's a nice looking car."
Yeah.
So definitely, go check them out. Yeah. Go kick the tires on a Skoda and see what you think. Let us know.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear back from people.
Yeah.
And get your opinions as well, because that's always cool. I was trolling the socials as I do of Powerworks, and there was a Ford F-150 that I was hoping was still going to be here. I mean,
still is here.
I didn't see it.
It's outside, I think.
Oh, okay.
Shelby.
Yeah.
With the Whipple Charger on it.
The Whipple Charger.
That's the biggest supercharger I've ever seen.
It's called a Whipple.
Yeah, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I think from that model is a 2019, I believe. I can't remember now, but it's like the sort of current-ish generation of them. And they were, disappointingly, the Shelby standard was 395 horsepower. But then the supercharged Whipple, which is what this one is, 755.
Yeah.
Now, driving it, it's a big old... Now, they're based on the Lariat, so they're based on the F-150 Lariat. So they're sort of, spec-wise, they're not, it's not like it's based on the King Ranch or they've just gone mental with a Raptor. So there are little things amiss. And they're still put together by a group of people in a shed, basically. Shelby's not... It's world famous, but it's not a massive operation with robots and AI, everything. It's just some guys and girls with silicon and screws and they put bits on.
Yeah.
But special thing. Yeah, really special. And the only issue we had with it, the reason it was in, was it was being used off-road, and when the vehicle's gone over the dune, it's bottomed out on the bottom. The approach angle isn't great, but it's so high that it normally gets away with it, and it's bottomed out and hit what the owner of the vehicle thinks was perhaps the remnants of a bush that had been smashed around and driven over, and it bent the radar heading for the adaptive cruise control.
Okay, that's a problem.
And the forward collision avoidance,
also a problem.
So it needed calibrating. Obviously needed straightening and aligning. We managed to get it straightened and aligned. There's a special tool for it. It's very, very straightforward.
Oh, okay.
Fiddly, but straightforward.
Yeah.
I like putting an IKEA cupboard together. but we couldn't communicate through it because the Whipple tune locks the control unit. So we couldn't communicate through it without removing the tune and then trying to reapply the tune. But that's a huge risk, because if we do that and it corrupts it, which it may well, so that obviously you can't just copy the tune from one vehicle and put it onto another one. So we were worried about that, and it was going to be about $3,000 to buy the tune and the license to then redo it if that happened. So the guys over at Altair, and to be fair, I don't know if I said this before, but Ford Altair, in terms of the dealers here, they're the ones we have the best experience with, whether it's parts or service, after sales in general, should I say. They are the most helpful, and they're very, very reliable.
Oh, that's good news. Yeah, that is really good to hear.
So we've got it booked in with them. They didn't have any appointments till next Tuesday.
They're very busy.
Yeah. And we were able to have a straight conversation, because I know, because I've been there. I've been in a dealership where a guy's turned up with a vehicle from an independent garage, and he or she has said to us, oh, can you just have a look and do this for me? And it's like, well, are you sure it needs that?
Yeah.
Usually it's not that. But, in this case, we knew what the problem was. They listened to us. They heard us out, and they've agreed that on Tuesday they will just try and communicate and do the calibration. And if it works, fantastic. There's a charge for that. If not, there's still a charge. But then they're going to say to us steps A, B, and C afterwards. So we calibrate those sensors all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of people use F-150s off the road, and a lot of people bend the brackets that hold the sensor on. Although I do notice one thing with that Shelby, which sort of goes back to the way they're made, where they've actually bent and ground off a part of the bracket anyway to fit their body kit over it.
Okay.
And then there's a cover over the radar head to keep it obviously kind of semi-protected from the elements, which is just siliconed on. It's just like black silicon, almost like an insurance repair here. But no, that's just how they've done it in their little shed somewhere in America. But, there's a bit of a charm to that. Yeah. It's like, the old school way of doing stuff where it was just a guy who had an idea. And maybe they've kept it that way for a reason, because that's the way they always did it.
Is the Whipple tuning, is that just a brand name when we see that on
basically things? Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, it's quite easy to explain, but not necessarily easy to help people understand what it is. But superchargers and turbochargers work in a similar way. They're operated differently, but basically all they're doing is taking a kilogram of air that takes up this much space and putting it in this much space. So then, because that air is in less space, you can get more of that air in each cylinder, and because there's more air, there's more oxygen. Because there's more oxygen, then you can put more fuel. So basically, you're compressing. They're just compressors. They're compressing the air down to get more in. Yeah. So that's great. But what you need to do is you need to then the engine control needs to then be able to operate the injectors in a proper way. So
So
you need to change the code for the injector operation. It's it almost becomes a bit of a catch-22. So you have the engine sucks air in through the induction effect from the way the engine rotates, internal combustion engine rotating. It's drawing air in the vacuum depression. That air goes through a sensor, whichever type of sensor you have, and that could be a whole episode in itself, but the amount of air is calculated by the temperature and etc., and the position on the throttle pedal, etc. That then determines how much fuel will be injected. But manufacturers, rightly so, have safety and operational longevity of the engine, environmental impact, and comfort. They have those three key indicators, really, that they have to look at when they're working out a map that we call a map, the way an engine's going to run from the control unit. They're pretty rigid, except for the fact that you do have variable valve timing, you do have extra injection for certain things. But the way they're changed and operated by the engine control and the way that is adapted is through reading the sensors in the exhaust, the oxygen sensors, lambda probes, whatever you call them.
I wonder where that came in.
So they read the They read the exhaust gas in terms of its hydrocarbon content, so unburnt fuel, and the oxygen content and various other things. But they read that before the catalytic converter and after the catalytic converter as well, to make sure that the catalytic converter is working. But also from that reading, it will then decide, okay, we're using too much fuel, we're not getting enough air, we need to back the fuel off, we're not using enough fuel, so it's lean, we need to add more fuel. And it can decrease or increase the fuel injection by, most vehicles, it's 20 to 25%.
Really?
Which is quite a lot.
That's a huge amount.
But at that point, that's your limit, and it will bring your warning light on.
Okay.
And if it's doing that for an extended period of time, sort of 15% onwards, it will put the engine light on anyway and say, look, there's an issue here. Now, sometimes it's just down to you've had a misfire, driven it with a misfire, and it's fouled a spark plug or it's fouled one of the oxygen sensors, in which case you can sometimes, not always advisable and it needs to be done properly, but you can sometimes clean an oxygen sensor and fix the problem. And the easiest way to test that on most of the European cars, you can switch them off. So you can switch the monitoring off. And if you switch the monitoring off and it runs on its default setting, where it doesn't look for that signal and it runs well, you know, okay, that's the issue. We'll just get the sensor out, try and clean it, put it back in.
Can you just leave it running on default?
No, because you can't. Once you cycle the ignition, it will turn them back on.
Okay.
You can. So tuning companies can code them out so they don't look for that, and that's normally what they'll do. But in the case of back to the whole point of this, the Whipple tune and any other tune that you get, you're changing the parameters that the injection, the oxygen sensors and everything else, the map sensor or MAP sensor, whatever you have on your intake or both sometimes, you're changing those parameters. You're making them wider, so there's less likelihood of an error, and it's allowing you to inject as much fuel as possible, but you're also being more arrow focused with certain things. So for example, on wide open throttle, so that's when you've got your foot all the way to the floor, pass kick down for old school listeners. When you've got your foot all the way to the floor, they'll do things like they'll switch off the AC, so you get extra power.
Okay.
The AC drains a lot, particularly on a magnetic clutch kind of compressor system. You will lose quite a lot of power. So on wide open throttle, the AC goes off. Doesn't stop blowing, and if you're not wide open throttle for more than 10 seconds, unless you're a lunatic, so the AC will come back on.
Sounds like you know somebody.
Yeah, your AC will come back on, and you'll be none the wiser.
Yeah.
But these little things do make a massive difference. So it's all done with binary code, hexadecimal. So
another reason to learn coding, kids.
Yeah, well, exactly. Particularly for where we're going with electric vehicles, and like we said, you can get 800 kilometers out of a Skoda with a 1.5 litre engine in it.
How's that possible?
So this is all done through coding. This is all possible because of the way things are coded. So it's very important. And some people, I know people, and with basics, I can look at a map and say, oh, okay, the injection's off or whatever. You can sort of see it with the graphs and live data over the top. I can see it. But I know people that can look at a map of hexadecimal or ones and zero binary and just be like, that's wrong. And we're talking hundreds of digits on a page, and they can manually write them and take them out. And in the old days, we used to have to take the control units apart and solder chips on and off the boards. And I've done that before, and marked 2 goals for the Digifant fuel injection system that Bosch did, Digi2. And that was kind of cutting edge at the time. But now,
better have good soldering skills.
Yeah, as long as you've got one of these laptops, you don't really need to do anything. But they're very, very clever how they work. But it's also, as with most clever things, there's the simplicity of it. Yeah. But we have vehicles in this region that are detuned because of the climate. So we've talked about it before, the oxygen's less dense, so you get less, the air's less dense, so there's less oxygen per given volume of air. So they're detuned to allow for that. So the fuel injection isn't as, let's say, aggressive is probably the word to use. It isn't as aggressive. In the case of diesel vehicles nowadays that have, a lot of people that have had diesels for the last 20 years will know what, commercial vehicles even longer, but they'll know what AdBlue is. AdBlue is sort of an ammonia solution that is there's a separate tank for it, which is then sprayed into the to get into the exhaust system to clean the exhaust, there's particulate filters in the exhaust which catch all the black. If anyone's been to watch truck racing, and you get all the big, or they've been behind a truck that's going up a hill and it's gone full throttle to get up there, and you see all the black smoke coming out the back. Well, there's that particulate waste, and they're basically cans on exhaust now that have filters to catch that, but it has to go somewhere. So they call it regeneration. It's just a way of not scaring the whale watchers to say they're burning it. And what happens is the fuel injector will inject a second or third, depending on how the engine's running, time, just after the point that the first or second has happened, to increase the temperature. And the increase in temperature then allows the particulate to burn off in the exhaust. And now most cars will do this without you noticing, but I can tell you from experience that on the VWs, when that was first introduced en masse, I think the first vehicle in the group was the Audi TT diesel in like 2002. They had particulate filters, and then the rest of the brands caught up. But in sort of 2006, 2007, we started to get them, and then the Common Rail came out, Common Rail diesel, we got them, and we were having to regenerate them, because what was happening was the sales executives were telling the customers the little knowledge that they had, because they wouldn't go on the training course. Oh yeah, just thrash it. Basically, just put your foot down and smash it round the town. That doesn't, it actually makes it a lot worse, because you're getting more particulate matter in the exhaust because of that, and it doesn't help. So you have to be at a constant speed for a set amount of time, for a sufficient amount of time, not a set. And if you do that regular enough, you'll never get the warning light on. If you get the warning light on, what that will tell you is you'll need to initialize that deliberately. Now, at that point, you will notice a power increase, and it's quite not. You're talking, I don't know, we've never done the dyno on it, obviously, and VW don't, that I can remember, they didn't give us any data, but 15, 20 horsepower difference.
That's a lot.
Which is basically what a tune is doing. It's adding extra fuel and allowing extra air to increase. And we had exhaust extractors. You'll have seen them in the, we haven't got them here because the door's always open, but you see exhaust extractors that pull the gas out in a closed workshop. And we've had a technician, I remember Paul Barker, his name, shout out Paul. He put an extractor on the back of the exhaust to do this regen, and it melted it onto the exhaust. Glowing hot.
Wow.
So we were always told to do them outside, not inside. He just didn't get the memo. But we saw in firsthand that they weren't messing around either.
Man.
So yeah, that regeneration for DPFs is a built-in tune effectively, so it will be triggered. And that's exactly how anyone that says they're getting the car chipped, they call it chipped because, as I said, we used to physically put chips in, or remapped, or tuned, or whatever it may be. That's what they're doing. Basically, in the basic, most simple terms, they're allowing the engine to take more air and put more fuel in.
There we go.
So not necessarily the best for the longevity of the engine, and if you do get it done, you need to bring your service schedule down. So if you're doing it every 10, bring it down to 8. And then if you hear people start talking about stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, this is when it starts to get a bit mental. Stage 1's your basic one.
Okay.
Stage 2, you're starting to talk about improved air intakes, improved exhaust systems, including turbochargers. Stage 3, different injectors. Stage 4, big intercoolers, and this is the people that are getting, well, the TSI engines when they were, the TSI, which was originally turbo supercharger, 1.4 litres in 2006, and they had them on the race cars, the touring cars, and they were doing 370 horsepower out of a 1.4, because they were tuned to the limits. And these are properly engineered, and they're engines that are accepting that race maybe 2, and then we're rebuilding or throwing it away and putting a new one in.
Wild.
Yeah.
Wild. Thank you very much for that. So you would, going back to the Whipple, recommend that kind of tuning?
Yeah.
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 Having driven
I wouldn't want to drive, like I say, I've driven it at 755. I wouldn't want to drive it at 400.
Yeah.
I don't think, because it's a big old truck.
Yeah.
With extra weight bolted onto it.
Of course.
So I wouldn't want to drive it at just 400. But then again, it's still a big old truck at 755. So it's one of those things where, if you've got a big boat and you want to tow a big boat, fantastic. But if you really want 700 horsepower and you want to be having fun, I don't think it's the right vehicle for that.
I see just a regular Ford F-150 Raptor, actually, I think,
yeah.
at work in the parking lot. And I laugh every time I see it in the parking lot because it doesn't fit in the parking space. It is hanging over. And there'll be a Mazda and there'll be an old Subaru that are kind of fitted in. And then you have it. And I just look at this and it's at the really back end of the parking lot. There's no cars around. I'm going, this person's doomed in any other parking structure.
How mad do you get when you're waiting in a car park for someone to park in a space in their pickup truck? And it's like, mate, get a smaller car if you can't park. Do you know what I mean?
I end up backing up.
Just get a smaller car.
Yeah.
It just annoys me. It's so annoying.
I find it dangerous when someone's decided they want to park beside me, and then I got to back out, and I can't see around the truck, but I'm like halfway in the lane now because it's already 3 feet hanging over the edge of the parking spot.
Yeah.
So I just find it, what can you do? But maybe that's just envy.
There's some part of me with that, yeah, definitely. I mean, if a VW Amarok came available, I think I'd have a serious consideration to buy one of those. I've always wanted one in the UK, and we got trained on them because they were sold as a commercial vehicle, which was a separate department to us. We were passenger cars, but obviously people weren't buying them for work.
No,
apart from them being a tax write-off, they were buying them to use to take the kids to school and back in. So we were going to get the service. We
never see them here. We don't see too many of them here.
No, there's not that many. There are a few around. There's not that many though. But I would. You see, the thing is, this is what scares me with a pickup truck, and I think you're in the same position really with the Wranglers. Once you've had something that's so utilitarian and so practical, you can't ever get rid of it.
That's the problem. And it becomes a real challenge because, I look at the Skodas and I look at the new VWs and I see the GTI-R and I look at that and, it's like, I am just in love. And then when push comes to shove, it's, I think it's just going to get another Wrangler.
Yeah, because you can't just nip over the sand or up the curb. Yeah, you get used to having that utility of taking it where you want.
The worst part is I'm not really off-roading anymore that much. So do I really need this four-wheel drive? No, but I really like it. And it's got all the things that people hate. Is it the most comfortable vehicle? No. Is it the most aerodynamic? Absolutely not. There's all sorts of things. But do I want to get rid of it? No.
Yeah, it's like I say, you just can't
get used
go
to
back.
Something. Yeah,
it's for so long.
It's tough. So we'll see where that goes. Anyway, that was fun. What else you got hanging out in the shop? Anything cool out there?
No, there's an old classic 348 Ferrari coming in. On Sunday. Some window motors.
Okay.
Imported from the UK, but it's not an actual UK. It's not a British car. It's still a left hooker. But that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Guy was like, "How long's that going to take?" I was like, "Where did it come from?" Because they didn't. Obviously not from here.
Yeah.
The UK. I was like, "Oh no!" So there's rust on it. Then, we've got to get into the door cards, which have probably not been off 20 years.
Yeah.
To fix the windows, which have probably not moved for 5 years while he's waiting for the parts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something's going to break. As long as it's not my Spirit, I don't.
Yeah.
We'll probably get through it. But yeah, that'll be interesting. We've had fun and games this week. It's obviously AC season started.
If you're not on the AC, get on the AC because it will go.
Yeah, we've had that issue for a lot of people. Oil leaks this year, and I don't know if it's just down to the whole people not using their cars as much during COVID and seals just aren't. They're just now getting to the point where they're giving up. I just don't know. But it's also probably down to the fact that people are keeping the cars a lot longer now and going through a lot more strife with them because what option do they have?
Yeah.
There aren't new ones available, and the ones that are available are so expensive. It's so I don't know. I think people are just keeping the cars longer maybe, and that's good for us, of course, but the constant giving of bad news to people.
Oh, well, I mean, like I had the bad news when I had the brake failure. And we haven't talked about that, but I had, and I mean, that was actually kind of scary.
Yeah.
Because it was 100% complete brake failure. Like there was no brake fluid. And and fortunately your guys came and picked it up. But, as I was kind of walking around and I thought, oh, no, maybe it's something else. The underside, so this was the right-hand side hose on the front broke. And as I walked around just taking a look, it was completely cleaned because the brake fluid had cleaned everything underneath there.
Yeah.
And it was, oh, man, but it was scary.
Yeah.
And it's you're so used to at least having some breakage. And then I thought, wow, what if I'd been going downhill? What if I'd been in traffic and this had happened? My wife said, I'm glad I wasn't driving because what would I've done? She says, hopefully all the training and all the experience would have kicked in, but maybe not.
Particularly in automatic.
Yeah.
You've got no engine braking, so to speak.
No.
Really. Not of any real value.
And you don't necessarily think to, fire it down into the lowest gear. So at least you're doing that and then yank up on your emergency brake.
Yeah.
So
luckily we're in quite a flat country.
Yeah, and when it happened, it wasn't a busy. It was late at night, so it was okay. This isn't a big.
I'm sure you'll have them in Canada. In the UK on some of the sort of the elevated roads with the inclines or declines. They have the gravel traps at the side for the brakes for the trucks whose brakes overheat, and it's like obviously we've not really got any unless you're driving up Jebel Jace.
Yeah,
there's no real roads that are up and down hill wise, but. We'd had, I think I said to you at the time, we'd had 2 or 3 brake hose failures within that sort of same 5-6 day period. One was done by a pressure washer, which I think we talked about on a Peugeot, and then we did. Then yours just failed. And it happens,
the hose just broke.
They have to be. It's a little bit like ACs. They have to be rubber because they've got to move.
Yeah.
Got to move the suspension and the steering. If they weren't, and they were just fixed like AC lines in houses, who's ever had an AC line leak in a house? I mean, it never really happens, does it? So if they were able to be fixed, you wouldn't have a problem. And unfortunately, that's not the way.
Yeah. The other one that I had on the same vehicle. The same vehicle had we had the pressure hose connector for the radiator. And as we were getting into a warm season, I'm thinking this is also an area that starts to go. And as I was looking at that hose, I'm sure it's been replaced once. We were talking, 400,000 kilometers on this, and it had a connector that was off. I mean, it was a hose clamp, but not the right kind of hose clamp for a car, but a hose clamp anyway. So I'm sure that hose had been replaced, and that's a vital piece of equipment, and the connector to it. I don't know what that's called, the seal or whatever it is, because that's actually where the problem was. But your guys obviously did the right thing and replaced the seal, this thing that it connected to, and the hose going,
The problem you've got with the hose, once you start to leak around where the clip's been, the clip has deformed the hose. Well, actually, no, not really. The hose is deformed around the clip.
Yeah.
So even when you put the clip back on, it's still loose. And what can happen is they leak internal to the structure of the actual hose, so then they leak through the hose rather than out of the hose, and then they get out that way. And we get it all the time where we when we empty a cooling system, we fill it under vacuum. It's not perfect because thermostat valves and heater cores in the front and rear, but it pulls almost all of the air out of the system. So then when we fill it, it's easier to bleed the remaining air out. But sometimes what happens is the hoses disintegrate internally, so one of the layers of the hose falls in.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So it doesn't actually let the water through. So you're like, what is wrong with this car? Why is the water not circulating? Change the thermostat. No. Take the thermostat out, it still won't circulate. The radiator must be blocked. No, it's not. And it's like, it happens all the time. And with oil and water mixture, when a cooler fails, we've got a Range Rover, and I'm waiting for the message. The guy's a friend of mine. I'm waiting for the message because one of the hoses, after we did the oil and water, failed when we first put it back up to do a flush on it. And it's like, well, they're all going to go. Yeah. These coolant hoses aren't designed for nothing but coolant.
Yeah.
So they've had oil and they go soft. So it's like if you microwave a pastry. It just doesn't feel right afterwards. It kind of does the job, but it's not right. And they feel the same. They go really pappy. And the heat and pressure that they're under after that, they're going to fail one by one. And the problem from a business point of view is customer comes in with a coolant light on and it overheating. Now, we can tell them all we want. Yep, you've got oil in the water, the sensor's blocked, that's why the light's on, but it's overheated because the coolant, the emulsification means that it's too thick, it can't go through the radiator. But then when they go away and then 3 weeks later they get the coolant light on and it overheats because there's a hose that's burst, to them it's the same problem.
Yeah, but it's not.
Even though we're explaining this is something different, it's just giving you the same symptoms, to them it's the same problem, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, as frustrating as that may be, this customer is a customer at the end of the day, and they aren't, they're not qualified and trained as a technician. So we have to accept. So it's really, really hard to keep that balance of, it's going to be like 4K to fix your issue, but we really need to spend an extra $5 on all the hoses on the engine. Who's doing that? Because also, they're not always all available. In fact, invariably, half of them aren't, because they don't normally fail.
Well, that was one of the things that you said about the Wrangler. You said this hose is not readily available. There's lots of Wranglers, but this hose usually doesn't go. So
I mean, and then you get cars like an Opel or cars like an Alpha. Nothing against the car. A lot against cars. Nothing against the cars on the record, but no parts.
Yeah.
Bottom radiator hose for an Opel we had in a few weeks ago. Can't get one here. They won't order one. It's 45 days. So then we call Vauxhall in the UK, and then we have to ship one over from there. And it's like, man, it's a radiator hose.
Yeah. And there's no one who can fabricate one?
So sometimes when they're relatively straight, so if they're straight or they've got regular angles, 90-degree angles, you can finagle, whatever you want to call it, or MacGyver one. And usually what we'll do is we'll buy, a lot of them are S-shaped, so you'll just get 2 90-degree hose pieces and then just put a metal hose and extra clamps. The only problem with that is you're adding more failure points.
Right.
And this
will fail.
Yeah, and this is why, like, hoses can be expensive. And again, the rubber, just like we talked about with the brake hose and the AC hoses, because the engine has to move, because it's a dynamic system. It moves on its mountings and it has to flex, so you can't have metal hoses. But sort of then you would think to yourself, logically, well, why don't we make all of it metal, except for a little flexible piece in it? And then that flexible piece is going to be dead cheap to buy. And you're right, but it's now got failure points. Got extra failure points, not only at the end of the hoses where they're on the flange, but then in the middle there's 2 more.
Right.
And this is the problem. So, and also buying the car new would be so much more expensive. And then what happens when one of the metal hoses does fail, which does happen? There are metal hoses on engines and they do fail. So that becomes an expensive job as well. There's, it's all, it's all very much a compromise.
But it's a tough one when you're going to now have the client calling you up and you're going to say, we really have to replace them all.
What are you supposed to say to them when they come back a month later? I told you so. That's not good business sense, is it?
That doubles the price of the repair, and it's already expensive.
This is the other issue, right? So you've given them the bad news initially. You've got to give it again. It's like, I've already paid for that. Yeah, I know. I'm really sorry. We had a Range Rover in last week, and we did a service on it. It was up in the air service. All the suspension bushers were worn out, and there's excessive play on the bottom arm bushers. We've explained it to the customer, as we do with most every customer. We've sent pictures and videos. The car's up in the air. Your bushers are no good. Okay. We've then put the car back down. That suspension's now been hanging for 2 hours.
Oh, no.
Customer doesn't want to do the arms. You're going to do the next service. That's fine.
Yeah.
But now the whole steering geometry's moved because the bushers have moved.
Yeah.
So the customer's taken we've then road tested the vehicle after the service, and the alignment's out, way out.
Yeah.
And when you brake, it's pulling.
Yeah.
Now that's not the customer's fault. We're the ones who lifted the car up, but we have to lift the car up to do the job.
Yeah.
So it's also not our fault. The fix is this, but you don't want to do it. Take the car away.
Yeah.
But then they've come back eventually realising, oh crap, now I'm going to wear my tyres out really fast. I better get it done. And it's like, how do you... These are questions that there are no answers to.
Right.
Unless, we manage to, work it out that everyone can become a millionaire and we can just all work on some system where it's fine, let's just get the work done.
Just do it.
But, there's no way, there's just no way to always do it. And giving bad news twice.
Oh, man.
And having to... everybody's been ripped off.
And that's the other thing, because everyone's had a bad experience at some point. Yeah. You're not giving them a bad experience, but they're going, am I getting ripped off?
Yeah, exactly. It's always, and look, you always question.
Yeah.
Especially estate agents and mechanics. Always question us.
And this coming from a mechanic.
Yeah. Always
ask
question
lots of
us.
questions.
Always question us. And I get it, but you know, it's so difficult trying to tell the truth, knowing that someone thinks you're lying.
Yeah.
You know, like you're so conscious of what you're saying. And I've had conversations with customers before about faults where we've been, and while I'm explaining it to them, been like, oh, light bulb's gone off, thinking, shit, now I know what. Yeah, you know, so you get that, but it's so difficult when you know or suspect that you know that the customer thinks that you're lying to them because they've had a bad, and we get customers, as do other garages here, and there are some good garages here, where customers will go to them and say, oh, I've been to so-and-so and they've told me this and it's no good. And immediately you're thinking, so you're already not happy with one person a few days ago. So rightfully so, you've taken your option to go somewhere else. But now I'm getting tired with that brush until I show you that.
Yeah. And if you agree with them, oh, you're in collusion.
Exactly.
Oh, you mechanics are the same.
This always happens, right?
Oh, man.
So, yeah, it can be... the podcast sometimes is therapy for me, isn't it? Because like just constantly giving people bad news. But, you know, we get it as someone that we obviously both know, Colin, we deal with all their vans.
That's the We Will Fix It guys.
Yeah, so it's always, we get the car vans in for service and keep them on the road as quick as we can, and we understand the time constraints because of the loss of earnings for them, and, you know, they've got to have the vans back. So everything that we do beyond the service is bad news, bad news.
Yeah.
You know, and I know from the time and money that we spend on our own vehicles that it would be such a drain on our business if we had to do it. Obviously, we can do it ourselves and, you know, we just pay for the parts and lose the time on productive time for other vehicles. But, you know, it's bad news to everybody.
Yeah.
No matter what. Unless somebody comes in and says to you, oh, my AC stopped working, and you get in the vehicle and it's not turned on. But then,
which does happen. Don't get me wrong.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
But it's not. That's not bad news to give to someone. Yeah. It's just you weren't. But that's not a nice conversation either. There aren't really any, you know, any great conversations, and you know, it's very, very difficult sometimes. And this is why when there's a repair that needs to be done, someone will say, "Oh, how long can I go without doing it?" That again is an impossible question to answer, because how do you drive? How often do you drive? What's your kilometres every year? It's very, very difficult. So sometimes we're too keen to get it done now, which then looks like we're just trying to upsell, and the balance becomes difficult.
Yeah, for sure. Oh man. A parting note, was driving in this morning to the podcast. Of course, I'm in the Jeep, no windows, nothing on. Find New Radicals playing.
Yes.
Old tune. You know, we all know that tune. Don't give up. There's a reason. Don't give up. So it's cranked, right? And we're on Mohammed bin Zayed 311, just cruising at the speed limit. Oh no, actually it was on Alkale Road. And suddenly my car is making this screeching, and I'm just going, oh my. It's like, fortunately I'm coming to the garage, but I'm just thinking, really? And then I'm thinking, oh, is the truck beside me making that sound? Turn off the radio. No, it's the New Radicals making that sound.
Reverb.
But it was the weirdest sound, because it literally sounded like it was coming from the suspension of the vehicle.
Well, at least it wasn't.
At least it wasn't.
Happy
I know.
days.
It's like, you know, and that fear that instantly comes into everyone when your vehicle's making a new sound. Actually, my other Jeep's making a new sound. And it's not a bad thing. It's tire wear sound.
Oh.
And my tires have gotten a little noisier.
Getting ready.
But it's a Jeep. So you know that Jeep noisy tire sound?
Yeah, we're not talking about the Willys Jeeps that go past you and you can hear them.
But think of one of those. But mine is not. Mine has got no mods on it, so it's stock. So I got you know, okay tires. They're not bad, but as they're wearing, they're probably gonna have to be changed next year. The wearage they've just gotten a little noisy.
Yeah, it's something that's important to sort of mention, I guess, here is with tyre wear, it's very, very usual, especially on more modern cars, for them to wear kind of unevenly because of how they're set up. But what we have to remember is that, a bit like a wheel bearing effectively operates silently. The moment you start hearing it is because there's more friction happening. The more friction makes the sound, it also makes heat.
Yeah.
The sound is a very, very small part of the energy transfer there. The actual main part of it is the heat. Tyres do not like temperature change. There's an unavoidable fact that you will start your vehicle in the morning at nowadays, 25 to 30 degrees C. And by the time you've driven 50 kilometers, they're going to be 60, 65 degrees C. That's unavoidable. But the problem is it changes the pressure in the tire so drastically.
Yeah.
You know, we could do an experiment in the sort of middle of the summer where we could have a car in here overnight and start it in the morning, and we could drive it in the middle of the day. And we could set the pressures to, let's say, 0.2 bar low, below the spec, drive it during the middle of the day for 20 minutes, bring it back in, and they'd be above by 0.1, 0.2 bars. So you have to, tire noise is like you say, it's the indicator. You know you're getting ready. It's going to be within the next 6 to 12 months. They're going to want changing.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's good that, because a lot of people, it happens gradually and you don't necessarily notice it. When you notice it, you can be mindful of it and get it done. But a lot of people don't, and we get the cars in and say, look, the tyres are real noisy. Like, are they? It's always been like that. Put new tyres on it, it's like, oh man.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like in a recording studio here. It's just so quiet now. But yeah,
for sure. Hey, Glenn, this has been a wonderful podcast. Anyone who wants to get in touch with us, by the way, if you're watching us on YouTube, leave us a comment, subscribe, put your questions into the comment box. If you're listening to us through any of your mediums, drop us an email, podaholicswithak@gmail.com. Send in your questions. If you're on a 100.3 talk radio right here in Dubai, send in a WhatsApp. They'll get it to us, and we'll get those questions also onto the program. So, hey, thank you very much, everyone, for getting involved, for listening, for participating. Glenn, thank you for the time, and we'll do it all again really, really soon. You've been listening to the Powerworks Podcast.